It's Leah. It is, it's only 9:30 and I already feel like my nervous system has been going crazy. It's been a busy morning. Sometimes I think I check my messages too early. I check my voicemails too early. Um, there's a reason why they say to not have your phone beside your bed and to get all uh, your routine, your morning routine done before you check things like your messages. Because even though I know there's no danger, my nervous system responds to messages as if there are. So this morning I got up. I already went to bed a little bit dysregulated. There was something I was watching on a TV show, and it sort of threw me into a loop, and I could feel myself spinning in the evening. And then this morning, woke up and went for my morning walk, which is great. I'm so glad that that is a staple in my life, because by the time I hit 9:30, even though I'm feeling dysregulated now, I sort of feel good that I have already done my walk. So a couple things in emails just come up, and I notice that I go into people pleasing mode, or I go into this urgency mode. Somebody's asking for something, something wants something, somebody's complaining about something, and right away, instead of responding, I feel myself reacting. So I stopped and I paused, and I actually have a tool that I use in the Nervous System Journaling Club. It's a GPT that I created that is a nervous system cost calculator. So I actually used it, and I put in what some of these things are. What is the cost to my nervous system to respond to this, or to be thinking about this, or using emotional energy? And I worked my way through, used the safety sequence, and saw that sometimes requests that other people make, they're not my problem. that may be something that somebody else needs, but it doesn't have to go to the top of my list today. So that was the first thing, and I have to remind myself of that sometimes, because sometimes the desire to serve and to give comes through really strongly, so that when people request something, I have this need that I want to deliver, and I want to over deliver. And sometimes I don't need to, and it's not in my nervous system's best interest. So that was sort of the first thing. The second thing, I actually made a list of a bunch of things that I want to be talking about over the next couple weeks. It's probably going to take me, of different nervous system things. But I want to tie back into the video yesterday where I talked about my client who had shared some challenges she was having, and she got feedback from family members. And one of the things we talked about is the concept of maybe. But the other thing that I talked about with her is asking herself this question of what does it look like to have my own back in this moment? Because that's a question that I have been using a lot, asking myself a lot. What would my response be if it was having my own back? So as I said in my first video last week, had a little bit of a disruption, conflict with one of my kids. And afterwards, in my mind, I was thinking, how do I have my own back on this? And I usually immediately go to, well, I'm going to tell them how it hurt me, and how I felt disrespected, and how I felt. And that has often been my go-to of taking care of me and nervous system. And I think that's a go-to for a lot of us. When we feel attacked, our nervous system gets activated and we go into defense mode. When you're in defense mode, what do? You want to defend. You want to justify. This is why it was upsetting. This is why what you did was wrong. This is why it hurts me. But that comes from a place of dysregulation. And I had to stop and ask myself, is that going to serve my nervous system? Is that going to serve what do I need in this moment? And I realized I don't need more drama. I need peace. I need calm. I need validation. And if I am seeking external validation when I am dysregulated to somebody else who likely doesn't have the capacity to validate me back. I mean, how many times have you had a conflict with somebody and then you go in and you try to explain what the situation was, even when things aren't sort of leveled out, and they turn around and they say, "Oh, you're totally right." No, usually what happens is defense meets defense, which meets defense, which meets defense, and we keep moving up in this world. So I kind of knew I could go in and explain why I felt it was disrespectful, talk about the emotional and invisible load that there is on moms in general, which will be a whole other topic. I could talk about, respect. I could talk about so many different things that I was feeling, but the other person does not likely have the capacity, because you know what? They've got their own stuff. Not only is there probably a difference in maturity and age and brain development, which in this case there certainly is, but I don't know what's going on in their life. I don't know if their reaction really had very little to do with me, that they were preoccupied with their own nervous system state. So I realized I can't be seeking validation from other people. We've talked about this many times before. We talk about this in the group all the time. Validation is an inside job. It feels good when somebody externally validates me and will say to me, "You're right, Leah, I'm so sorry." It feels good to get that apology. And sometimes that is exactly what is needed when we're trying to repair a relationship. But in the moment of what does it mean to have my own back, I think I need some internal validation. Not all conversations have to be spoken out loud. I can have a conversation by way of journaling or writing a letter. I think of Abraham Lincoln, who wrote those hot letters that he just wrote things and then he just never sent them. I think of that. That is a way of expressing the emotion. I need to get my emotions out. My nervous system needs to be allowed to have the whole range of emotions. But I don't need to have a particular person receive it in a particular way. I need to get it up and out, and I can do that in many different ways. And if I do want the external validation, which sometimes feels good, I don't necessarily need it from the person who I had the interaction with. I can call a friend. I can, use my partner. I can journal, like I said, and have it reflected back on me. I can use doodling to have it reflected back at me. So this is what I shared with my client. Sometimes when we talk about having our own back, standing up for ourselves, defending ourselves, looking at what our brilliant little selves needed, because that's essentially what it comes down to. My nervous system wanted to feel seen and heard and respected, but I need to be careful at where I'm trying to find that validation. I need to be careful and not going to sources that are probably going to re-wound me. Instead, I want to have a connecting experience with myself. So that was one thing that I shared with her. Really, having your own back can be quiet. It can be just a pat on your own back. It can be citing an affirmation that even though they're not paying attention or they aren't giving me what I need, I can give me what I need. I will always have my own back. I will always take care of things. And then I can release and they can go about doing their things. The other thing for me to acknowledge this morning that really came up is sometimes I am seeking connection with people who don't want to connect with me. They want convenience. That their interaction with me is not about connection, it's about convenience. And that's okay. But I need to learn how to separate things so that when something pops up, I don't necessarily look at, I need to connect back. I can identify, oh, they're just looking for something that's convenient, and I get to decide whether I want to offer it back to them or not. So that was a little tail end. I had that sort of aha moment right at the end. It circled back to my morning of getting all these emails, that a lot of these emails, they're not about connecting, they're about convenience. And it's about convenience to somebody else, which sometimes I'm more than happy to honor when my nervous system is in that place. Anyhow, thank you for listening to my ramblings, and I will see you next time.